That expensive suit can't cover the stench of the slums on you. 9 o'clock a.m. inside the main lobby of the Riverside Police Department, where fluorescent lights flickered over stained floor tiles and the all-too-familiar scent of old sweat and long-standing authority lingered in the air. This was not a place for someone like her. Amara stood still, fingers tightening slightly around the phone in her pocket, a subtle furrow of her brow, a faint, controlled smile, not from weakness, but from being far too used to this kind of insult. Captain Holton squinted at her, each word dripping with open contempt. I know your type. Bought degrees, demands for rights, and a delusion of importance. Amara stepped forward, unhurried, every movement precise. Her tailored blazer hugged the quiet steel in her posture. She was about to speak, calmly, professionally, but his hand shot up, cutting her off. Let me ask you this. What makes you think you have any authority to question law enforcement around here? All around them, conversation ceased. A few dry chuckles echoed in the room. Someone whispered, "Who does she think she is?" But she merely raised one eyebrow like she was waiting for just the right moment to strike back. Can't you imagine what it feels like to be dismissed, judged, and underestimated, yet know you hold the power to change everything? The question hangs in the air like smoke, heavy with possibility and the promise of justice yet to come. This moment, frozen in time, represents more than just a chance encounter. It's the beginning of a reckoning that will shake the very foundations of this precinct's corrupt culture. The community meeting room buzzes with nervous energy as folding chairs fill with an eclectic mix of residents, activists, and uniformed officers. Amara enters quietly, her casual blazer and jeans deliberately chosen to project approachability rather than authority. She's registered for this forum under the simple name A. Ellis, a strategic anonymity that allows her to observe the precinct's true nature without the filter of deference her real title would command. The precinct's lax verification process, requiring only an email and name, has worked perfectly in her favor. Her presence here stems from something deeply personal, a wound that never fully healed. 30 years ago, her father Marcus was wrongly accused of armed robbery, a victim of systemic corruption and racial prejudice that destroyed his dreams of becoming a teacher. She still remembers visiting him in that cold, gray prison, seeing the defeat in his eyes as an innocent man paid for crimes he never committed. That injustice planted a seed that grew into her life's mission, reforming the broken systems that crush the innocent and protect the guilty. Today she operates under a carefully constructed cover. As chief advisor to the governor's task force on police reform, she possesses the legal authority to conduct unannounced cultural audits of law enforcement facilities. Her real identity remains hidden, allowing her to witness authentic behavior patterns that would be sanitized if her rank were known. Every dismissive glance, every microaggression, every display of bias becomes evidence in her mental dossier. Captain Holton commands the room from the front, his presence dominating the space like a storm cloud. When Amara attempts to introduce herself and her concerns about community policing, his interruption is swift and pointed. "Hold on there," he says, his voice carrying the authority of someone unaccustomed to being challenged. "What exactly qualifies you to speak on law enforcement matters?" The question isn't genuine curiosity. It's a challenge wrapped in institutional arrogance. It's a challenge wrapped in institutional arrogance. It's a challenge wrapped in institutional arrogance. The other officers exchange knowing looks, their smirks revealing a culture of casual disrespect. Officer Martinez whispers to his partner, "Who let her in?" While Sergeant Thompson openly favors the comments of Robert Sterling, a white community leader whose vague platitudes about supporting our boys in blue earn enthusiastic nods from the law enforcement contingent. When Sterling suggests that community problems stem from outside agitators, the room's temperature seems to drop several degrees. Amara maintains her composure with practiced grace, her voice steady as she presents data-driven analysis of policing effectiveness and community trust metrics. But Holt's dismissiveness is palpable. He mispronounces her name despite her clear introduction, interrupts her mid-sentence to redirect attention to Sterling's empty rhetoric, and openly questions whether she really understands the complexities of law enforcement. Each slight is carefully catalogued in her mind, building a case that will soon have devastating consequences for those who underestimate her. The young officer Davies shifts uncomfortably in his corner seat, his conscience clearly troubled by his colleague's behavior. A local reporter, Sarah Chen, takes notes with increasing intensity, her journalistic instincts sensing a story brewing beneath the surface tension. These potential allies don't go unnoticed by Amara, who files away every detail with the precision of someone who's spent years building cases that topple corrupt systems. As the meeting progresses, the microaggressions pile up like kindling waiting for a spark. Holt's favoritism becomes increasingly blatant, his praise for Sterling's superficial observations contrasting sharply with his dismissal of Amara's substantive policy recommendations. The atmosphere grows thick with unspoken prejudice, each exchange revealing the deep-seated bias that poisons this institution from within. The meeting's tension escalates when Holt begins peppering Amara with increasingly hostile questions designed to undermine her credibility. "Do you even understand how law enforcement actually works?" he demands, his tone dripping with patronizing condescension. "Or are you here just to stir up trouble based on what you've seen on TV?" His words are calculated to diminish her authority while reinforcing his own dominance over the room. As Holt's verbal assault continues, Amara's mind flashes to a courtroom 30 years ago. She sees her father, young and hopeful, sitting at the defendant's table as a prosecutor painted him as a dangerous criminal based on nothing more than racial stereotypes and manufactured evidence. She remembers the way his shoulders sagged when the guilty verdict was read, the way her mother wept silently in the gallery, the way their family's future crumbled under the weight of institutional injustice. That memory, still raw after decades, fuels her determination to remain calm and methodical in the face of Holt's aggression. Her responses are measured and professional, each word carefully chosen to demonstrate her expertise without revealing the full extent of her qualifications. She cites statistics on police effectiveness, references successful reform initiatives in other jurisdictions, and presents logical arguments for improved community relations. But Holt dismisses every point as the product of an overly emotional perspective, a coded phrase that reveals his inability to engage with her ideas on their merits. The other officers begin joining the attack with subtle reinforcements of their captain's hostility. Some remain silent but complicit, their body language broadcasting agreement with Holt's assessment. Others contribute small verbal jabs or dismissive gestures that create a wall of institutional resistance. The message is clear. Outsiders who challenge their authority will be marginalized and dismissed, regardless of the validity of their concerns. Despite the mounting pressure, Amara's composure never cracks. Her jaw tightens slightly when Holt suggests she's out of her depth, but she channels that anger into focused observation. Every interaction is mentally catalogued, every display of bias carefully noted for future reference. She's not just enduring this humiliation, she's building an airtight case against a corrupt system that believes itself untouchable. During a brief lull in the verbal sparring, Amara discreetly sends a text message to a trusted contact. Phase 1 complete. Documentation proceeding as planned. The message is cryptic, but carries enormous significance for those who understand her true mission. She then begins recording the meeting on her phone, ensuring that every subsequent exchange is preserved for posterity. The audio files automatically upload to a secure cloud server she established before entering the building, creating an unalterable record of the precinct's toxic culture. Officer Davies notices her recording and looks even more uncomfortable, his conscience warring with his loyalty to the department. Reporter Chen's note-taking becomes more frantic as she senses the story developing before her eyes. These potential allies represent hope in a room dominated by prejudice and corruption, their discomfort with the proceedings offering glimpses of the better future Amara is fighting to create. The young officer's internal struggle is visible in his body language. He wants to speak up but lacks the courage to challenge his superiors. Chen, meanwhile, recognizes the newsworthy nature of what she's witnessing, her journalistic instincts telling her that this seemingly routine community meeting is about to explode into something much larger. Both represent the possibility of change, the cracks in the system that Amara's pressure will soon widen into full breaks. As the confrontation builds toward its breaking point, Amara's restraint becomes increasingly impressive. She's playing a longer game than anyone in the room realizes, allowing Holt's arrogance to grow unchecked while she gathers the evidence that will ultimately destroy him. Her calm in the face of escalating hostility isn't weakness, it's the patience of a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. During the meeting's break, Captain Holton's hostility erupts into public humiliation that crosses every line of professional conduct. He corners Amara near the coffee station, his voice deliberately loud enough to ensure the entire room can hear his verbal assault. "Listen here," he declares, his finger pointing accusingly at her chest. "I don't know what kind of urban agitator nonsense you're trying to pull, but it won't fly in my precinct." The racial dog whistle in his language is unmistakable, designed to other her and justify his aggression. The term urban agitator hangs in the air like a slur, its coded meaning lost on no one present. Holt's voice rises with each word, his authority unchallenged by subordinates who've learned to enable his worst impulses. "You're disrupting proper procedure," he continues, his chest puffed out in a display of territorial dominance. "I'm ordering you to leave before you cause any more trouble for decent, law-abiding people trying to do their jobs." Amara stands tall, despite the withering assault, her spine straight and her voice steady when she responds. "I'm here as a concerned community member, exercising my right to participate in public discourse," she says, each word measured and clear. Her dignity shines through the humiliation, a beacon of grace under pressure that earns quiet nods of respect from the few fair-minded observers in the room. She refuses to be baited into the angry response Holt clearly wants, denying him the satisfaction of proving his point about emotional instability. Officer Davies shifts uncomfortably in the corner, his face flushed with embarrassment at his captain's behavior. Reporter Chen's pen moves frantically across her notebook, capturing every degrading word for what she increasingly realizes will be a significant story. These witnesses to Holt's misconduct represent the accountability he's spent years avoiding, their presence transforming his private prejudice into public scandal. As Holt continues his tirade, Amara steps back and retrieves her phone with deliberate calm. Her call appears routine to casual observers, but the conversation that follows is anything but ordinary. "This is Dr. Ellis," she says quietly into the device, her voice carrying an authority that would shock anyone who bothered to listen carefully. "I need you to confirm that our documentation protocols are secure and that the backup systems are functioning properly." The person on the other end of the call is clearly someone of significant importance. Their response is prompting Amara to discuss evidence preservation and protocol violations with the casual authority of someone accustomed to high-stakes legal proceedings. She mentions encrypted cloud storage and immediate legal review, terms that would terrify Holt if he understood their significance. Her conversation concludes with instructions to prepare the preliminary report for state oversight review. After ending the call, Amara sends a carefully worded email to her legal team, summarizing Holt's behavior and requesting immediate analysis of potential civil rights violations. The message includes timestamps, witness names, and specific quotes that will soon become Exhibit A in a case that will destroy the captain's career. Her methodical approach to evidence gathering reveals the mind of someone who's built a career on bringing down corrupt systems through meticulous preparation and unshakable resolve. Holt, oblivious to the legal noose tightening around his neck, continues his verbal assault with increasing confidence. He's performed this song and dance countless times before, crushing dissent through intimidation and institutional power. But this time is different. This time, his victim is documenting every word for an audience that includes state oversight officials and federal civil rights investigators, who will soon be very interested in his conduct. The contrast between Holt's crude aggression and Amara's professional composure creates a powerful visual narrative that Shen captures in her notes. One represents the old guard of unchecked authority and institutionalized prejudice, while the other embodies the future of accountability and justice. The battle between these worldviews is playing out in real time, with consequences that neither the perpetrator nor the audience can yet fully comprehend. These procedures seem targeted at a specific group, don't they? But do they know who they're dealing with? The question reverberates through the room like a challenge, its implications lost on those too blinded by prejudice to recognize the danger they're courting. Amara's calm in the face of such blatant disrespect isn't submission. It's the confidence of someone who knows that justice, though delayed, is inevitable. Holt's campaign against Amara metastasizes throughout the precinct as he rallies his loyal officers to join his crusade of humiliation. "She's just another diversity hire trying to make us look bad," he tells Sergeant Thompson, loud enough for half the building to hear. His words spread like poison through the ranks, each repetition adding new layers of distortion and malice. Officers who weren't even present for the original confrontation begin treating Amara with open hostility, their second-hand prejudice fueled by their captain's inflammatory rhetoric. The systematic nature of the bias becomes impossible to ignore as the harassment escalates. Officer Martinez demands that Amara prove her expertise right now by reciting police codes from memory, while Officer Johnson openly mocks her suggestions for community outreach programs. "What's next?" he sneers. "Therapy sessions for criminals?" The laughter that follows his joke reveals a department culture so toxic that basic human decency has become a punchline. Social media amplifies the persecution when Officer Rodrigo posts a thinly veiled reference to outside troublemakers on his personal account, complete with coded language that his followers easily decode as racial antagonism. The post goes viral within hours, attracting comments that range from merely ignorant to explicitly threatening. The digital pile-on transforms a local incident into a regional controversy, with Amara's reputation under assault from strangers who know nothing about her except what they've gleaned from prejudiced social media posts. The precinct's community meeting deteriorates into a spectacle of institutional bullying as Holt's allies work to isolate and silence Amara. Every attempt she makes to contribute to the discussion is met with interruptions, eye rolls, or outright dismissal. When she references successful reform programs in other cities, Thompson waves her off with a condescending, "That might work in fantasy land, but this is the real world." The message is clear. Her ideas have no value because she has no value in their eyes. A potentially devastating setback occurs when Holt's technology-savvy ally, Officer Walsh, discovers that Amara has uploaded a recording to a shared precinct server for temporary storage. Acting on Holt's implicit orders, Walsh deletes the file and attempts to clear it from the server's backup systems. His sabotage represents a criminal obstruction of justice, but his confidence in the department's protective culture makes him believe he's untouchable. Officer Davies, whose conscience has been increasingly troubled by his colleague's behavior, approaches Amara during another break with urgent news. "Ma'am," he whispers, glancing nervously over his shoulder, I thought you should know that Walsh deleted something from the server. I saw him do it, and he was bragging about it to the other guys. His warning comes at significant personal risk, as reporting on fellow officers violates the unwritten code that protects corrupt behavior within the ranks. The news of the deleted recording sends a chill through Imara's carefully maintained composure, but only for a moment. Her preparation has been too thorough to be derailed by this predictable act of sabotage. The cloud backup system she established before entering the building has automatically preserved every second of the meeting, creating an unalterable record that exists far beyond the reach of Holt's technical interference. Walsh's criminal act has only added another charge to the growing list of violations that will soon destroy multiple careers. Imara's response to this escalation is characteristically strategic and forward-thinking. She contacts her legal team with updates on the precinct's criminal behavior, then reaches out to the State Oversight Board with preliminary findings that will trigger a comprehensive investigation. Her communications are professional and detailed, each message building a case that will be impossible to dismiss or discredit when the full scope of the corruption is revealed. Her cryptic post on social media platform X becomes a rallying cry that attracts national attention. Truth will outrank ignorance, always. The message, accompanied by hashtags related to police accountability and civil rights, goes viral within minutes. Supporters begin sharing their own stories of police misconduct, creating a digital movement that transforms Imara's individual struggle into a symbol of broader resistance against institutional prejudice. The viral nature of her post creates pressure that extends far beyond the local precinct, drawing attention from civil rights organizations, legal advocacy groups, and federal oversight agencies. Holt's attempt to silence one woman has, inadvertently, created a national conversation about police accountability, with consequences that will reverberate through law enforcement agencies across the country. As the digital storm builds, Imara verifies that her cloud backup systems remain secure and accessible to her legal team and oversight allies. The technology that Walsh thought he could manipulate has proven far more sophisticated than a small-town police precinct can counter. Every insult, every threat, every criminal act of obstruction has been preserved in multiple, secure locations, creating an evidentiary foundation that will support prosecutions and reforms for years to come. The precinct's toxic culture, which thrived in darkness and secrecy, now finds itself exposed to the harsh light of public scrutiny. Holt's arrogance has led him to attack someone with the resources and determination to fight back, and his institution's protective walls are crumbling under the weight of truth and accountability. The reckoning he never believed would come is now inevitable. The climactic moment arrives with the sharp electronic chime of Imara's phone receiving a priority video call. The room falls silent as the screen illuminates with the official seal of the state government, and a familiar voice fills the air with unmistakable authority. "Dr. Ellis," the caller announces, his tone carrying the weight of high office. "This is Attorney General Richardson. I trust your assessment of the precinct's compliance culture is proceeding according to our established protocols?" The words hit the room like a thunderbolt, each syllable reshaping the power dynamics that Holt thought were permanently fixed in his favor. Dr. Ellis isn't just any community activist. She's chief advisor to the governor's task force on police reform, a position that grants her unprecedented authority over state law enforcement policy and personnel decisions. The casual way the Attorney General addresses her reveals a professional relationship built on mutual respect and shared commitment to justice. Imara's response is calm but commanding, her voice carrying the authority that she's kept carefully concealed throughout this ordeal. "Attorney General Richardson, I can confirm that my unannounced cultural audit has yielded significant findings regarding systemic bias and procedural violations within this facility." Her words are precisely chosen, each one building a legal framework that will support comprehensive disciplinary action against multiple officers and administrators. The revelation of her true identity sends shockwaves through the assembled group. Holt's face drains of color as the implications of his behavior crash over him like a tsunami. He's spent the last 2 hours publicly humiliating someone with the legal authority to end his career, document his crimes, and recommend federal civil rights investigations that could result in prison time. His arrogance has led him to attack the one person in the state with both the power and evidence necessary to destroy him. Amara calmly presents her credentials to the stunned room, her official identification card bearing seals and clearances that represent the highest levels of law enforcement oversight. I am authorized to conduct unannounced audits of police department culture and compliance, she explains, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she's revealing. Today's assessment has provided extensive documentation of bias-based harassment, criminal obstruction of justice, and civil rights violations that require immediate intervention. The cloud-backed evidence she's gathered becomes the foundation for immediate action, as she shares her preliminary findings with the Attorney General in real time. The recordings, witness statements, and documented threats create an unshakable case that will survive any attempt at cover-up or institutional protection. Walsh's attempt to delete evidence has already devastating in scope. Richardson's voice carries the weight of state authority as he addresses the room through the video connection. Captain Holt, you and your department are hereby placed under immediate investigation for civil rights violations and obstruction of justice. Dr. Ellis's findings will be reviewed by federal authorities and appropriate charges will be filed within 48 hours. The pronouncement lands like a death sentence on careers built on unchecked prejudice and institutional protection. The officers who participated in Holt's campaign of harassment now scramble to distance themselves from their captain's sinking ship. Sergeant Thompson suddenly remembers urgent paperwork that requires his immediate attention, while Officer Martinez develops a mysterious case of selective amnesia regarding his earlier comments. Their cowardice in the face of accountability reveals the hollow nature of their earlier bravado. Officer Davies, whose conscience prompted him to warn Amara about the deleted evidence, stands a little straighter as he realizes he's on the right side of history. Reporter Chen's furious note-taking captures every moment of the dramatic reversal, her story already writing itself as she witnesses the complete collapse of a corrupt power structure. The Attorney General's praise for Amara's work resonates through the room like a benediction of justice finally served. Dr. Ellis's commitment to protecting community rights and ensuring police accountability represents the best of public service, Richardson declares. Her findings will inform policy recommendations that protect citizens from the kind of bias and misconduct witnessed here today. Amara's focus on systemic reform rather than personal revenge becomes clear as she outlines the corrective measures that will transform the precinct's culture. Training programs, oversight protocols, and accountability mechanisms will ensure that no future victim suffers the kind of treatment she endured. Her vision extends beyond punishment to prevention, creating safeguards that will protect countless innocent people from institutional prejudice. The explosive satisfaction of witnessing Holt's comeuppance fills the room as his authority evaporates like morning mist. The man who thought himself untouchable now faces the destruction of everything he's built through decades of unchecked bigotry. Justice, long delayed, has finally arrived with overwhelming force. Captain Holt's world collapses with breathtaking speed as the State Oversight Board moves to suspend him pending a comprehensive investigation into his conduct and that of his enablers. The suspension notice, delivered within hours of Amara's revelation, strips him of his badge, his authority, and his access to the precinct he's terrorized for years. The man who wielded power like a weapon now finds himself defenseless against the machinery of justice he thought would never reach him. The precinct's public apology, broadcast across local news stations and social media platforms, becomes a masterclass in institutional accountability. The Riverside Police Department deeply regrets the unprofessional and discriminatory conduct displayed during today's community forum, the statement reads, each word carefully crafted to acknowledge wrongdoing without admitting legal liability. We are committed to implementing comprehensive reforms to ensure such behavior never occurs again. Holt's allies, who spent hours reinforcing his prejudice and participating in Amara's humiliation, now scramble to save their own careers from the spreading investigation. Sergeant Thompson submits a transfer request to another precinct, hoping distance will insulate him from consequences. Officer Martinez suddenly discovers a newfound respect for diversity training, volunteering for programs he previously mocked. Officer Rodriguez deletes his inflammatory social media posts, but screenshots preserved by vigilant activists ensure his words will haunt him in upcoming disciplinary hearings. The evidence against the corrupt officers proves overwhelming and unassailable. Amara's cloud-backed recordings capture every slur, every threat, every moment of institutional bias in crystal-clear audio that no amount of legal maneuvering can discredit. Witness statements from Officer Davies and reporter Chen provide corroborating testimony that transforms isolated incidents into patterns of systematic discrimination. Walsh's attempt to destroy evidence adds federal obstruction charges that carry prison sentences measured in years rather than months. Officer Davies emerges as an unlikely hero when he provides detailed testimony about the precinct's toxic culture, describing years of misconduct that went unreported due to fear of retaliation. His courage in speaking truth to power breaks the code of silence that protected corrupt officers for decades. I became a police officer to serve and protect, he tells investigators, not to participate in the kind of behavior I witnessed today. Dr. Ellis showed me what real integrity looks like. Reporter Chen's article, published within hours of the confrontation, goes viral across social media platforms and news outlets nationwide. Her detailed account of Holt's downfall becomes a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked prejudice in positions of authority. Local police captain destroyed by racist state official reads the headline that transforms a regional story into national news. The viral nature of Chen's reporting attracts attention from civil rights organizations, legal advocacy groups, and federal oversight agencies who begin their own investigations into the precinct's practices. The Department of Justice announces a pattern and practice investigation that will examine years of complaints and disciplinary records for evidence of systematic civil rights violations. What began as one woman's quest for accountability has mushroomed into a comprehensive federal examination of institutional racism. Holt's reputation, built over decades of unchallenged authority, crumbles under the weight of documented evidence and public scrutiny. Local residents who suffered years of biased policing come forward with their own stories, creating a chorus of voices that can no longer be silenced or dismissed. His name becomes synonymous with the kind of institutional prejudice that federal reforms are designed to eliminate. The financial consequences for Holt and his enablers extend far beyond lost salaries and benefits. Civil rights lawsuits filed by previous victims gain new credibility in light of the documented evidence of systematic bias. The precinct's insurance carriers begin settling cases they previously fought, recognizing that Amara's recordings make defense impossible. Legal fees and settlement costs will drain department resources for years to come. The contrast between Holt's previous arrogance and his current desperation becomes a source of grim satisfaction for those who witnessed his abuse of power. The man who believed himself untouchable now faces criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and the complete destruction of his professional reputation. His fall from grace serves as a powerful reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, can arrive with devastating force. Walsh's technical expertise, which he thought would protect the department from accountability, instead becomes evidence of criminal conspiracy to obstruct justice. His deletion of evidence demonstrates consciousness of guilt that prosecutors will use to secure convictions against multiple defendants. The cover-up, as so often happens, proves more damaging than the original crime. The speed and thoroughness of Holt's collapse sends shockwaves through law enforcement agencies across the region, serving notice that the old days of unaccountable authority are ending. Officers who built careers on intimidation and prejudice now understand that their actions have consequences, and those consequences can destroy everything they've worked to build. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, Amara addresses the community during a town hall meeting held in the same room where she endured hours of systematic humiliation. The space feels different now. Cleaner somehow, as if the removal of toxic influences has allowed fresh air to circulate freely. Her presence at the podium carries an authority earned through grace under pressure rather than inherited through institutional position. "Justice isn't revenge," she begins, her voice warm but firm as it carries to every corner of the packed room. "True justice is accountability, ensuring that systems serve all people equally, regardless of their background or appearance." Her words resonate with an audience that includes many who witnessed her earlier treatment, their respect evident in the attentive silence that greets her message. The transformation in the room's atmosphere reflects deeper changes occurring throughout the precinct and the broader community. Officer Davies, now serving as interim captain while reforms are implemented, introduces new training protocols designed to eliminate bias and promote community engagement. His first act was establishing an anonymous reporting system that allows officers to report misconduct without fear of retaliation. Amara's approach to systemic change focuses on building bridges rather than walls, recognizing that lasting reform requires cooperation from good officers who want to serve their communities honorably. "We rise by lifting each other," she continues, "not by tearing others down. The goal isn't to punish good people trying to do difficult jobs. It's to create systems that support their best instincts while preventing the worst impulses from taking root." Her mentorship of Officer Davies becomes a model for the kind of leadership transformation she envisions throughout law enforcement. During their regular meetings, she helps him develop community policing strategies that build trust through transparency and accountability. His willingness to challenge the department's toxic culture despite personal risk exemplifies the courage required to create meaningful change. The ripple effects of Amara's intervention extend far beyond the Riverside precinct, as other departments implement similar reforms to avoid federal investigation. Training programs emphasizing de-escalation and cultural competency become standard requirements, while body cameras and civilian oversight boards provide additional layers of accountability that protect both officers and the communities they serve. Community initiatives sparked by her example begin addressing the root causes of police-community tension. Neighborhood organizations partner with reformed departments to create dialogue programs that humanize both sides of historical conflicts. Youth programs provide alternatives to street involvement while building positive relationships between young people and law enforcement officers committed to genuine service. The local reporter Chen, whose coverage of the incident launched her career to national prominence, continues documenting the reform process with the same intensity she brought to exposing the original corruption. Her series on police accountability becomes required reading in journalism schools and law enforcement academies, demonstrating the power of fearless reporting to create positive change. Federal oversight agencies point to the Riverside transformation as proof that comprehensive reform is possible when leadership commits to genuine change rather than cosmetic improvements. The precinct becomes a testing ground for new policies and procedures that are eventually adopted nationwide, proving that local actions can have global implications. Amara's reflection on her experience emphasizes the personal growth that comes from standing up to injustice despite overwhelming odds. My father's ordeal taught me that silence in the face of wrongdoing makes us complicit in perpetuating harmful systems, she shares with the town hall audience. But speaking truth to power, even when it's difficult and dangerous, can transform entire institutions. The quiet dignity with which she handled Holt's abuse becomes a case study in effective resistance, taught in leadership programs and civil rights courses as an example of how grace under pressure can defeat institutional prejudice. Her refusal to respond to aggression with aggression demonstrated that moral authority often proves more powerful than positional authority. As the evening concludes, Amara's final words to the community carry the weight of hard-won wisdom. Change doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without struggle. But when we commit to justice over comfort, to truth over convenience, we create the possibility for systems that truly serve everyone. The standing ovation that follows reflects not just appreciation for her courage, but hope for the future she's helping to create. Amara's final social media post crystallizes her message into a call for action that resonates far beyond the borders of one small town. Stand up, call out, and change the systems around you, she writes, her words accompanied by a photo of the transformed community meeting room where dialogue has replaced hostility. Your voice can shift power. Use it. Every act of courage creates space for others to be brave. The post generates hundreds of thousands of shares within hours, each repost carrying her message to new audiences, hungry for examples of successful resistance against institutional injustice. Comments pour in from people inspired by her example. Teachers challenging discriminatory policies, healthcare workers advocating for equitable treatment, citizens demanding accountability from their elected officials. The challenge to viewers becomes a rallying cry for a generation that refuses to accept inherited prejudices as permanent fixtures of society. Who's next to rewrite the rules, she asks, understanding that sustainable change requires millions of individual acts of courage, rather than relying on a few heroic figures to carry the entire burden of reform. The hashtag #JusticeOutranksPrejudice trends globally as people share their own stories of confronting bias and demanding accountability from institutions that thought themselves untouchable. The movement transcends racial and cultural boundaries, uniting people around the simple principle that human dignity should be protected regardless of who holds positions of power. Amara's example provides a blueprint for effective resistance that combines strategic thinking with moral courage. Her preparation, documentation, and measured response to provocation demonstrate that defeating institutional prejudice requires more than righteous anger. It demands tactical intelligence and unshakable commitment to justice over vengeance. The transformation of one police precinct becomes a symbol of possibility for communities nationwide struggling with similar challenges. If comprehensive reform could happen in Riverside, with its entrenched culture of bias and corruption, then change is possible anywhere that people commit to the difficult work of holding institutions accountable to their stated values. Educational institutions begin incorporating Amara's story into curricula designed to teach students about effective advocacy and the power of nonviolent resistance. Her example joins the pantheon of civil rights heroes who demonstrated that individual courage, when properly channeled, can topple systems of oppression that seemed permanent and unchangeable. Legal advocacy organizations use her case as a template for building evidence-based challenges to institutional discrimination. Her methodical documentation of bias, combined with strategic revelation of her authority at the crucial moment, provides a model for future civil rights litigation that maximizes impact while minimizing personal risk. The federal reforms implemented in response to her findings become known as the Ellis Protocols, establishing standards for police accountability that bear her name for generations to come. Her legacy lives on in every officer who thinks twice before abusing their authority, knowing that their actions might be recorded and scrutinized by oversight officials, with the power to end careers built on prejudice. But the explanation for Ellis's fame remains mystery. Congressional hearings reference her case when debating federal legislation designed to prevent the kind of systematic bias she exposed. Her testimony before national committees carries the weight of someone who didn't just study institutional racism in academic settings, but confronted it directly and emerged victorious through careful preparation and unwavering principle. The slogan, "Justice outranks prejudice," every time, becomes a permanent fixture of the civil rights movement, printed on protest signs and spoken at rallies where people gather to demand accountability from their institutions. Her words capture the essential truth that moral authority ultimately proves more powerful than institutional position when backed by evidence and sustained by courage. As her story spreads across digital platforms and traditional media outlets, Amara Ellis becomes more than just an individual who stood up to corruption. She becomes a symbol of the transformation possible when ordinary people refuse to accept injustice as normal. Her example proves that one person, properly prepared and strategically positioned, can indeed change the world. The ripple effects of her courage continue expanding long after the initial confrontation, inspiring new generations of activists who understand that lasting change requires both moral clarity and tactical sophistication. Her legacy reminds us that justice delayed is not necessarily justice denied, as long as there are people willing to do the patient work of building cases that corrupt systems cannot survive. Connection and empowerment flow from her example to countless others who previously felt powerless against institutional prejudice. Her story provides proof that preparation, principle, and persistence can overcome even the most entrenched systems of bias, transforming both individual lives and entire communities in the process. The question she posed, "Who's next to rewrite the rules?" continues echoing through every heart that beats for justice, every mind that dreams of equality, and every soul that refuses to accept that prejudice must always win.